welcome. It is a real pleasure to have you here with us in Barcelona in the VIVO studio.
Thank you so much, Paul, for inviting me. I really feel honored to be part of your golden episode. Number 50. Wow, congratulations.
Well, you know, you're starting to sound a bit Eurovision. We just had Eurovision, so I guess you're giving us 12 points, 12 points. It has been an adventure. It's been even a luxury. And well, since that's kind of the name of this episode 50, and now have this teaser. Well, I think it's time that we reveal your secret. What is the greatest luxury? What would be your definition of luxury?
I've been doing a lot of reflection and introspection on this topic. So my personal idea of luxury is about freedom, living a life without limitations of any kind. It's also about true and deep connections and about making a difference. All this makes, in my view, a meaningful and fulfilling life. And that's the ultimate luxury for me.
Well, I fully agree, and perhaps it could be even summed up in a holistic way, you know, as a sense of well-being, continual well-being. But when I think of the hectic, frenetic lives of business people I know, and I'm one of them, you know, how does that apply? How can we live that out as business people?
As you said, I like to think of it in a holistic way, in terms of mind, body, and soul. So let's start with the body. Giving your body real nourishment means not only practicing good nutrition, but also having proper rest, meaning enough sleep, but also time to just be. This is a challenge in a society focused on doing and having instead of being. It seems that doing nothing has a bad reputation, but we need to stop, pause, be in the present moment and not always in the go-go mode.
The go-go mode, yeah. It's just like, well, we say in Spanish, corre, corre, you know, run, run. And I think in any language that is understandable for a lot of our listeners here, or if you're watching this video. And my colleague here on the voice team, Carrie, she puts it this way, and she likes to say this saying. She says, I want to remind us all we're human beings and we're not human doings. And but you know, when we were looking at the script this morning, George said that he really truly hoped that we remembered that this is a business podcast and it's not a session of kumbaya and everybody, you know, floating on clouds and everything. So you know, I think that the advice of Carrie would be for us to continue this conversation from this point on, but as much in as a very practical way, as much of a practical, pragmatic way we can.
Okay, so let's do that. Especially in business, we often take health for granted. We are all so busy. We really don't give it a lot of thought. However, good health is not automatic. And in my opinion, caring for the body is a clear investment. For example, taking supplements can be done from a place of wellness, meaning contributing to your health. Or it can be done from the perspective of illness, trying to fix something. So in the end, taking care of our body and health is a matter of self-respect, or at least this is how I see it.
I like what you just said about it being an investment. That's a good business term, you know. But when I think also, getting back to what I said a moment ago about the reality, how can we live it out? I think a lot of us as leaders, as CEOs, CMOs, all types of leaders, at the end of the day or at the end of the week, especially that crash on Friday, we have a sense of a total lack of energy. We're worried about being sharp. So this is kind of a trick question, a surprise, spontaneous question. But if you were to name 3 vitamins that are easily accessible, you know, in the chemist and the pharmacy, that might help a typical business person, which would those be? Or a mineral, so also whatever you think is relevant here.
I would say 2 vitamins and 1 mineral. Vitamin C, it's really basic for our health, as well as vitamin D. And usually we don't have enough of this in our diet. And then I would add zinc, which is a mineral, and it has really a huge impact on our immune system. And having a really healthy immune system means having a lot of energy and being able to deal with this hectic lifestyle. So these are my recommendations. Yeah.
Okay, well, guess what? I take some of those already, so that must be why things are working out pretty well lately. I'm feeling peppy. So, okay, well, let's move on to the next segment, and we will see you there.
See you there.
You know, Rosa, a lot of people are such fitness freaks and vitamin freaks, or I don't know if there's a term for that. But what I find very intriguing as we move on now is when we think about the luxury of well-being in terms of the mind. Um, Tell us more about that.
In this case, it's about constant learning and giving nutrients to the mind. Just like we care for our body, we also feed our mind. We feed it with ideas, news, assumptions, and everything we believe. Some people consume and accept information without questioning. And in my view, critical thinking is a key aspect nowadays. For example, when I'm teaching, I like it when my students question the ideas that I'm sharing. That's what makes for a good discussion.
You're getting a little revolutionary here because it seems that a healthy debate is not always welcome in today's societies, but that would be a topic for another episode. But I love that you do that. You stimulate that debate, and that, of course, is good for the mind. What else can we do to eat healthily in terms of our thoughts, our mind, our well-being in that sphere of our lives?
Well, being mindful and selective with what we choose to put in our mind really pays off. Our thoughts can be a waste or an investment. Judging, criticizing, gossiping, all this is junk food for the mind, but not only about others, also about ourselves. Sometimes we are really tough with ourselves in our inner conversation, and we need to stop that inner critic. Having a good mental diet is crucial.
Yeah, and I don't know if the people who are listening to us, you who are out there listening, find this something that's relevant to your own life. But I think that many of us as leaders, CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, we are pretty hard driven, and we are tough with ourselves, as you're just saying, Rosa. So thank you for that. I think we need to be aware of that. And in terms of big ideas, because innovation is all about big ideas, I wanted to quote a great thinker of the 20th century, which was Eleanor Roosevelt. And she has a quote that I've always loved, and I'll have to zoom in on my notes here just to make sure I say it correctly. She said, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. Kind of like some of these garbage TV talk shows that we have here in Europe, probably, in the US, around the world. What would you say about what Eleanor Roosevelt said?
Paul, I love this quote. And I see the mind as a garden. We decide what kind of seeds we want to plant. Whatever we cultivate will grow, and it is totally our choice.
Mm-hmm. Very, very nice. I like that metaphor of a garden, and also about the freedom to decide what we put in to the garden, the seeds that we're putting in, and the crop that we wish to then harvest. My sister, who lives in London, she always jokes about the concept of quote wars on social media. Like, my quote is better than your quote. I don't want to be starting a quote war here, but we just talked about Eleanor Roosevelt. What you just said about creating a garden with luscious, wonderful ingredients makes me think of Paul of Tarsus. And there's also a very famous quote, perhaps some of our listeners and viewers will remember this. So maybe we can end this segment on this note. He said, whatever is true and whatever is noble, whatever is right, pure, lovely, admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Totally. I love it, and I absolutely agree with it.
Rosa, I'm really enjoying this voyage through these three areas of body, mind, and spirit, or soul, as many say. And the topic at hand, I'll just remind everyone, if you're tuning in right now in the middle, is we're talking about the greatest luxury for all people, but also for us as high-achieving business people, which is well-being in our lives. And since we were just talking in regards to how to feed our mind quite well, I think there's a real egregious problem in society today, which is mental health. And we're seeing a lot of bad things happen based on the fact that I think what we're seeing are the results of mental malnutrition. So do you think that diet, this malnutrition is a big part of the problem, or is it something else?
Yeah, it is all connected. Nowadays,
Mm.
stress and anxiety have become part of our normality. And we are used to having a nervous system which is out of whack. And this is related to the hustle, which seems commonplace these days. A person who has a regulated nervous system will respond from a state of calm and confidence to whatever situation he or she faces in life. So this is a key aspect when we talk about leadership in the business world, because leaders need to respond from a place of confidence and calm, even in a chaotic or challenging situation.
Indeed, so true. And I think a lot of us will agree with that. That said, you're making me think about the fact that we put the term best practices to everything for digital marketing, for e-commerce, for AI. Can you think of any best practices that we can apply, all of our listeners, in terms of creating that calm state, having a well-regulated, stable nervous system, because it's key.
Yes, certainly. My favorite ones are meditation and breath work, and they are both very useful in this regard. This is why it is said that you should meditate for 1 hour a day, unless you are very busy. In that case, you should meditate for 2 hours a day. And,
Yeah.
I often hear people saying, I will meditate when I have time. But this is like saying, I will go to the gym when I'm fit. So it doesn't
True.
really.
So true. Well, and when you are talking about breath work, you mean like breathing exercises, I suppose, that type of thing.
Yes, exactly. There are different types that everyone can try, very simple, and this can be part of our daily routine. And they have an instant effect of the way you feel.
Okay, cool. Because I'm really bad at making bread, and if you were talking about bread work, that would be a different thing. But what we're talking about now makes me think of my friend George here on the Voice team, and he's so really kind of black and white, and he would just jump right now and say, "Look, talking about meditation to any business person makes you think of somebody in a turban sitting in a lotus position. It's kind of a dangerous term, and I don't want anybody who is tuning in here or listening, following us, to disconnect. So, how can we make sure that that doesn't happen?
Okay, yes, I totally understand your point. So let me bring this down to earth. And we can call it something else if you wish. For example, mindfulness, reflection, prayer, concentration, being aware of your thoughts. The key point is that these practices help us to relax and shut off the mind. It is then that we get creative ideas and solutions to real business problems.
Well, I've told my staff this too. I get some of my best ideas even for this podcast and things we talk about in the shower. I have a business friend here in Barcelona. He loves to run mornings, evenings. That's kind of his flow in that regard. And one thing that I've been noticing in business travel is that if you have to have a layover and you're in a airport where the air is not so good always and it's hot, I'm seeing a lot of inner courtyards where, travelers can go out, get into the fresh air, look up at the sky, kind of have one of those moments, That's could we classify that along the same lines of what you're saying? Is that a type of modern day meditation? Certainly, if I'm looking up at the sky in an airport and I'm getting out of that artificial air, I can take a couple of deep breaths. That might be a good idea to kind of practice what we're exploring here.
Totally. Meditation can become a lifestyle, and we can get into a calm state while performing many different activities. Actually, my favorite type of meditation is moving meditation. Like you said, while running or while dancing, I get the best ideas and yes, for my writing or for everything. And same happens when you do these breathing exercises. This can become part of our daily routine, just like brushing our teeth. It's basically a matter of habits and priorities that make a difference in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say one thing. Thank God, because when sometimes they talk about these things, I think about what Michael Jackson used to do to relax, which was put himself on a floating tank for hours. And I'm a little claustrophobic sometimes. And so I'm glad that you're telling us things that we can really kind of apply right away. If it's like brushing our teeth, well, I brush my teeth every day. I take showers. Okay, great ideas. But so, I mean, what do you think? Just kind of ending this segment about things like people get into tanks and stuff. Do we need to do that? What was that all about?
Yeah, these sensory deprivation tanks gained popularity in the 70s, actually in order to foster creativity among artists. These tanks allow you to totally close off the external world and go deep inside. So it is a simple method to totally shut off all your senses. This can be uncharted territory for some people, but this experience can bring interesting insights and creative ideas to the surface. And it is really great for problem solving. But of course, we don't need to do this. There are many other ways. And I think everyone can find their own way to relax and calm and go deep inside.
So, Rosa, I just couldn't resist, This is my form of meditation. Her name is Frankie, and not only is she my daughter, as we say today, but she's also the official pup here at Barcelona Virtual, and kind of the mascot of the studio. So she wanted to say hello, and so she
Hello,
probably
Frankie.
didn't like that. I don't think I can do this either, but I'll try to get her more involved in the podcast.
Hello, Frankie.
She seems to like it, but anyway, we'll move on. But as you see, one thing I've often thought and also said to my staff is being a successful business person doesn't mean you need to be really boring. You can laugh actually. So
Exactly.
and this brings us to the final part of our journey here, thinking about the greatest luxury. When we look at those conferences, schedules, planes, trains, and automobiles, and sometimes we're arriving back home very late and very tired, just shattered, as the Brits would say. And I think a lot of us feel this longing for more. So as we have a soft landing here, no one should get afraid. We're not going to get too heavy, deep, and real. But let's talk about the soul, things like meaning, spirituality, perhaps even, legacy. Some of us who are a little older, we start thinking about what we're going to leave behind. What do you think about all this? What would you like to share?
Paul, we are often too focused on the physical world and too busy crossing off things of our to-do lists. So sometimes we forget that we are actually spiritual beings having a human experience and not the other way around. We go through life in a robotic mode, and eventually we may lose ourselves. We call this an existential crisis, but I think it is actually a crisis of meaning. As we slow down, we become more aware of who we are and get a glimpse of the meaning of life.
What you just said made me think of a very famous song by Sting when he was with the Police in the 1980s. And I think, if I remember correctly, that was the title of the song, "We Are Spirits in the Material World." Yeah, I think we do need to slow down, but it's so difficult, don't you think? It's such a fast-paced society.
Yes, I totally agree. It is a challenge. A friend of mine who is a businessman told me something recently that got stuck in my mind, and I would like to share it here. He said, "I don't need a vacation. I need a sabbatical." And this is a strong statement in my view, but we always have a choice. Downshifting or voluntary simplicity are a movement which has been gaining traction during the last years. It aims at breaking the cycle of overworking and overconsuming fostered by the consumer society. And it proposes a balanced lifestyle that it is externally simple and internally enriching.
Okay, I get you, but when we talked about the body, there's really clear things I can do. It's the vitamins, the minerals, the exercise. When we talked about the mind, obviously, education, constant learning is key and very doable, especially in this information age. But what is, a lot of us look for formulas, and there are people on my staff here at the on the voice team who would say, "Well, I need a formula. What's a formula for a CEO, CMO, CFO, CTO, and all the other O people that we are? What is the formula for an enriching life?"
Okay, well, I think
big question.
It is a big question, so I will try to give some ideas. I think that many of us know people in the business world who are great achievers, but deep inside, they feel a sense of emptiness. So cultivating a mindful lifestyle, making room for the practices we've mentioned before, stopping to smell the roses, getting in touch with nature and with our own nature, and making a difference. All these are key ingredients of a fulfilling life. And the end result of living this way is experiencing what the ancient Greeks called eudaimonia, a deep sense of contentment and satisfaction with life.
I always love it when the ancient world is mentioned, the great thinkers, because we're just going too fast and we're also superficial so often. Does that link to this concept of legacy? I mean, if I have such a fulfilled life, unless I'm very egotistical, I think a lot of us, when we have that sense of bliss or fulfillment and a deep sense of contentedness, we also wish to share it with the people around us, our loved ones, and even with the whole world. So does that link into legacy somehow?
Totally. I do believe that a meaningful life involves sharing and making a difference. And again, this is a lifestyle because it can be part of our everyday life. Making a positive impact on the life of others is a true privilege, and we can do this in many ways. One of them is just being an example, living an authentic life, having high values and standards, leading with the heart, and inspiring others. In the end, the way we live life and all the lives we touch along the way, I think this is our legacy.
Well, if anybody is very observant, they'll be noticing that it must be getting close to lunchtime, because we're doing a lot of talking about planting seeds, harvesting, great ingredients, and I'm feeling quite well fed, even though my stomach is growling, I'll have to admit. But I would call this conversation good soul food.
Yeah, exactly. I actually usually use the expression candy for the soul. So yeah, along the same lines. I like that. You know, in the end, it's about high quality food in a wide sense for the body, the mind, and for the spirit. And making this a priority in our busy lives, because it pays off in the long term. And just to wrap up our conversation, let me add one more analogy. I see life as a potluck party where everyone brings something valuable to the table, and we all share it and enjoy it together.
I know you were last year, I think you were in Greece, and that may have had an effect on you, but I love, and the potluck, of course, is an American Indian idea of the community coming together. And as a result of this chat with you, I do hope that you who are listening feel that you're part of this table. I look at this table and I see it's full. I see smiles all around. And I think that the potluck meals that people have brought are starting to smell wonderful. So without further ado, thanks again, Rosa, and bon appetit.
Thanks to you, Paul. Thanks again.